Hi again, everyone. Bob Burg back with another episode of Go Giver Influencers. And we have a very special guest who will be talking about, and our episode today is influential educators. And this is a very influential educator. And when I think about education, I think about when I was a kid going to school. And I know when I say that, it sounds like it's going to be followed with I walked 10 miles to school every day, barefoot, uphill, in the snow, even during the summer. And of course, that's not true. It was never more than 5 miles, and not every summer. Now, that really didn't happen. I actually, I had great teachers. Problem was, I wasn't a good student. Some of you know my story that on the day I graduated high school, and everybody's throwing the caps or the caps up in the air, and I'm walking off the field, and I saw my guidance counselor, and he saw me, he came over to me, he said, "Berg, I can't believe I'm actually seeing you here today." And that sounds like kind of a mean thing to say to a kid, but I got to tell you, he was right. I was surprised to see me there today, and he was really a nice guy. But sadly, I didn't have a lot of respect for school, for the educational process. And I think the teachers were really good. I think that if there was anything maybe they could have done better, and this does not mean the responsibility is necessarily on them, because I have to own what I did. And by the way, not being a good student is not something I'm bragging about, because it set me back. When I finally got serious about learning, I was behind because I hadn't taken studying seriously. I think maybe if there was one thing I would have benefited from is possibly some of those educators selling me and my classmates on why learning was important. Not just the facts and figures, and there's something to be said about them, of course, but why it is just so important to understand the importance of thinking, of learning, of growing. And I think that was missing. Again, not blaming them. It is what it is, and was what it was. Now, the person we have today, what a difference that she makes. And I'm just going to tell you about her first, and I really can't say enough about her. Dr. Amy Fast has been a teacher at the elementary level, instructional coach at the elementary and middle levels, and now is an assistant principal at McMinnville High School. That's in Oregon. She's the author of "It's the Mission, Not the Mandate." Kathy will post the Amazon link in the discussion window. And she's an active commentator on social media about public education policy and practice. Now, her big social medium is Twitter. That's really where she is, where she hangs out. And I've been following her for a while, and I love what she shares. Now, her Twitter handle is @FastCrayon, which you'll also find in the discussion window. Her new blog is called Fast Crayon Scribbles, and it's at fastcrayon.com. She's also one of the most inspiring, caring, and solution-oriented people I've ever met. And I'm just delighted that she said yes to joining us today. Welcome, Dr. Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored you asked.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Now, I want to begin with something specific, sort of just to set the premise, which I always like to do. Specifically, your premise, okay? What do you see as the primary function of education?
That's a huge question. And that's actually why I wrote my book in the first place, because I think if you got a room of hundreds of people together and posed this question to them, no two people would come up with the same answer. And I know that a lot of the people who you work with and who follow you in the business world, it's pretty common knowledge that you can't run a successful business if you don't have a clear mission. And so when you think about public education and trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is really transforming society and transforming the individuals in society, if we don't have a clear mission, how do we ever realize that purpose? And so for me, the purpose of public education is so much more than just academic outcomes. It's really elevating the human experience, and that's the individuals that are living public education on the day-to-day, and that's also the future of society, elevating society as a whole. So I see it as much bigger than it's historically been designed to serve a much bigger mission than it's historically been designed to serve. And I think sometimes because we have too narrow of a vision of what it's supposed to accomplish, it's not surprising that when our results aren't ideal.
Okay, so in your wonderful book, again, it's the mission, not the mandate, which right there just says it. You know, one of the things you talk about is the mandates. And you have a story early in the book about a discussion with I think it was a principal. And, you know, it was, well, it's about the kids, which sounds very noble. And in many ways, you know, they do care. But what happens is as you talked about, it's followed by a mandate that ends up being anything about the kids. How does that work, and why does that work? Is that just bureaucracy in action? What?
Yeah,
because I know that they mean well.
Right. I think what happens is, you know, people care so much about doing right by the kids that they want to hold schools accountable. And you know, human beings are pretty hard to quantify. It's hard to quantify their growth, and so we try our best to capture their growth and success through numbers, whether it's through standardized test results or graduation rates or AP scores or you name it. And those numbers then reflect how well a school is doing. And so the problem is when we reduce human beings to numbers, we're never gonna fully reach their potential or help them reach their potential, because we, as you know, working in the business world, you can make a profit and actually not do right by people as a business. And so as educators, the numbers shouldn't be the end game. The service to human beings should be the end game. And so we need to really make the human experience the end goal of schools. And the numbers that I believe we should factor are the stakeholders' perspectives and opinions on how we're doing in terms of motivating them and inspiring them and helping them grow and reach their own goals and learn what seems relevant to them and what we feel is relevant to society. And so we miss the mark when we try to oversimplify what it means to educate. And because we reduce public education to academic outcomes, we then correlate those academic outcomes to numbers on some test somewhere. And unfortunately, education is just about so much more than those numbers.
Yeah, well, I love what you wrote here. This was in the preface. I highlighted this one and put 2 X's, 2 stars next to it here to make sure I saw it. How did we get ourselves, and again, this is from your book, The Mission, Not the Mandate. How did we get ourselves into the game where we had somehow won if we reached the right number of students who proved proficient at their basic reading and math skills, yet we're not able to demonstrate responsibility and respect? 2 things that will take them so far in life, you know, when they have it, and lose if we did not meet that magic number, but quite literally save some students' lives by inspiring them to believe in themselves and pursue their passions.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I just absolutely love that. And I also wanted to, on the next page, the unintended consequences of trying to improve instruction and achievement before engaging in the larger discussion about what we want most for our students and our society. Oh my gosh, it just touched me so deeply when you wrote that. And I've seen you, of course, tweet those kinds of things on Twitter. We talk about influence a lot on the show. Obviously, it's the, you know, Go Giver influencers. Influence is basically, on a basic level, moving people to action. Now, you have in a sense, 2 customers that you're moving to action. You as an administrator, as a leader, okay, as the assistant principal, you have the teachers and you have the students.
Right.
And in a sense, you teach the teachers how to teach the students, maybe, or you create the environment for this to happen.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And you can't motivate through coercion, through force, obviously. So how do you, Dr. Amy, tap into the motivations of the teachers and the students so that you're,
right,
especially when you've got so many of them, to kind of try to individualize it and also make it good for the whole?
Well, it's not easy.
No.
For one. But also, you have to contextualize this with the fact that public education's kind of been under this persecution for quite a few years now, and teachers are even vilified in America often. They're accused of failing kids and failing society. So not only is it difficult in an organization as large as like our high school, which is 2,200 students and a couple hundred teachers, but it's extremely hard when you're up against this uphill battle of teachers already feeling vilified and persecuted by the very people that they serve sometimes. And so I think that's really what it makes it so incredibly challenging. And then adding on top of that, how hard the work is. It's emotional labor, and that's the hardest kind of labor. I mean, it's parenting, and then it's parenting being held accountable for the growth of all these unique individuals that have very, very individualized things that make each of them tick. So it's a hard job, but I would say, you know, if our goal is really in building societies, then we can't help students at the expense of teachers, or help students at the expense of parents or any stakeholder. We have to serve all stakeholders of our community, because they make up our communities, and that's what we're doing. We're in the business of building our communities. So we have to build up our teachers, build up our parents, build up our business partners, and build up our students. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Pink's work with motivation, but he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we really try to embrace that at our school by giving both teachers and students the autonomy to get creative and fail forward, take risks, get excited, and then, you know, mastery. They need to have feedback about how they're doing, and they need to feel like they're doing things well. And too often as educators, we focus on those students that we weren't able to reach. And it can be really frustrating too, because you're a rung of this giant ladder of helping, like I said, helping humans grow. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that whole trajectory, and that you had a really big impact on a student because you only see their growth from September to June. So helping teachers and students feel like masters over their craft is imperative. And then again, finally, my big platform is purpose, and reminding them that this work is about so much more than maybe even, you know, public policy says the work is about. That this is really about building communities and helping students feel like alive with this possibility that they matter beyond their wildest dreams. And that's, if a student doesn't pass a test but they feel that way, I want teachers to feel that they're a success. And so keeping that in the forefront is, I'd say, the most important part of motivating our staff and students.
Well, the comments here are all very nice. I don't see any specific questions, and you're welcome to submit any you want for Dr. Amy, but the comments are very nice, and I knew they were going to love you. You heard me talk about my experience in school, small part of it, and you heard me say that one of the things I kind of believe is that rather than being taught what to think, that how to think is so important. And I would even take it to, and perhaps you do this at your school, but even covering areas such as, you know, whether entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence, financial intelligence, and some of those things, the real life skills that if kids have these, it just equips them to, you know, to go out there and be able to add value to the marketplace, which they're going to soon enough learn is the only way they're going to be rewarded, both financially and emotionally. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I'm with you 100%. First of all, school has changed tremendously since you and I were in school. I mean, even since I was in school, I couldn't Google the answers to my questions, and now students can. So we really shouldn't be teaching students what they can just Google on their phone. So like you said, teaching them how to think critically is so much more important than the rote memorization, or what we call in schools drill and kill kind of practice of the facts. But I would take it a step further and say teaching them how to think is not even as important as teaching them why to think. Like giving them a purpose that's noble and makes them feel compelled to contribute beyond themselves, then they'll want to tap into their critical thinking and have a reason to think critically about issues that matter, because it's not just for a grade on an end of unit exam, but it's actually to help, like I said, help their communities or help help the world in some way. And I can think of so many kids who were like you in school, who maybe were, you know, had given up on themselves, but they would never give up on a kindergartner or another student who is disenfranchised. And sometimes by giving to others, or if students feel like they matter beyond themselves and feel significant in some way to their communities or even their school community, then like I said, they're compelled to tap into those critical thinking. And what you said about emotional and social intelligence is so right on the money. I mean, you look at the latest World Economic Forum report on what businesses want out of employees. And if I were to ask you, what do you want for your own children, or what do you want in an employee you were to hire? You probably wouldn't say, I want them to read at this level. I want them to be able to do algebra 2. And I want them to know chemistry. That's probably not the three things you'd say. You'd say, I want someone who can be a good team member. I want someone who can problem solve. I want someone who can communicate effectively. And so these, what we call in education, soft skills, which really aren't soft at all, but are
Right.
the more tangible skills,
Mm-hmm.
are really what the World Economic Forum says are the crucial skills in the workforce. And there have been studies that show that they're twice as effective of academic and technical skill combined. When you're able to capitalize on those soft skills in the workforce, you're able to influence far more people than you are with your technical skill.
Yeah. Well, you know, Jeffrey Colvin, the editor at large at Fortune magazine, he wrote a wonderful, wonderful book called Humans Are Underrated. And in this book, he said, you know, it used to be that we would ask the question, what can we do that technology or robots or whatever can't do? And that's no longer even a question, because they can do everything we can do pretty
Right.
much. But the question now becomes, what can humans do that will only be accepted by humans coming from humans?
Another human, sure.
Right. Yeah. And so those skills that, again, and you made a great point, because, and I say the same thing, when people say soft skills, I don't think of those as soft skills.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
And so, you know, what he said is empathy, teamwork, collaboration, support, you know, those are the things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got, go ahead.
In schools, I don't know if you've read Big Potential by Sean Aker, but I'm a huge fan of his. And in schools are generally these individualistic snapshots of how students do. And what Sean Aker's point is that our success shouldn't be gauged on how well we do as individuals, but how we make others grow, like our influence on other people. And so when you think about schools and how we measure kids, we don't measure them on how influential they are on their classmates or their school community. We just measure them on their individual accomplishments. And really, there's nowhere in the world where you can accomplish something solely alone and have that be worthwhile, unless it impacts something else, something outside of you or someone else outside of you. And so really taking a hard look at in schools, why do we take these like individual snapshots of kids and then rank them and give them feedback on how they're doing against these standardized measures, as opposed to how good they make the people around them. Really, that's what's going to, you know, benefit them in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a question here from Adam Spear, who writes, I'm considering opening a charter school in my area. Have you found that these schools have opened avenues to students that aren't available in the traditional academic system?
Definitely, charter schools have more leeway to get creative with the educational system. I'm no expert of charter schools at all, but I would say that sometimes a traditional public school can do the same. It depends on the school board you have, the amount of autonomy that you're given. There's once you check off certain boxes, there's actually quite a bit of wiggle room in schools for how you go about implementing certain practices. You're still going to be measured on the results that everyone else is measured on, but charter schools definitely, the whole point of charter schools is that they get to kind of take risks and experiment a little bit. But anyone who starts a charter school thinking that that private or charter schools are inherently more successful than public schools, that would be misguided thinking, because public schools actually, when they're measured against the same standards that charter and private schools are, do quite well. It's the amount of autonomy you need to do whatever you're planning to do in that charter school that would probably dictate whether or not you should look into the charter movement or try to implement these changes in your local public school.
Okay, thank you for that question, Adam. And we still have some time left, but I want to again, it's The Mission, Not the Mandates: Defining the Purpose of Public Education by Dr. Amy Fast. And it's a fascinating book, and you really see a person who puts both her heart and her head into this. And I think I wrote on one of the promotional pieces, if you have a child or a grandchild, you want them attending a school that she is in a leadership position, because I just love her heart. Now, I want to bring up something that is really kind of a difficult subject, and I think it's just one of the scourges of school, and that is bullying. And I think, and I've said this to you before, I think bullying has probably always been around. It's always been a part of schools because it's always been a part of life. But I would think that as humanity grows and evolves, that there would be certain systems put into place that would absolutely discourage, if not put a total end to bullying itself. Now, I'm wondering, do you feel, first of all, that I'm right as I'm saying bullying is still a thing? I don't have any kids, and so I can't speak, but I have many friends who have kids, and bullying seems to be a thing. But it almost seems as though it's become more sophisticated, probably due to technology and social media.
Yeah, well, I would say I'm going to try to offer you a slice of hope here, Bob, because I working in schools, I am so hopeful for the future. Our kids are amazing. I think that bullying is nowhere near as problematic, and granted, I'm speaking from my vantage point in one school. So in the school that I work in, nowhere near as problematic as when I went to school. I think it's different. I think because of the social media platforms, people can feel like it's less personal. They're more removed if they're the instigator of bullying, and that they can hide behind a screen. And that's where I think the biggest issues come from, is the bullying that happens on social media, and people making each other feel less than. I think it probably depends on each individual school's culture. What I know about all humans, and especially about teenagers, is that people want to feel significant. They want to feel like they matter. And most people are desperate to just feel that they matter. And if you can't get that feeling from something that's productive and good, you're going to find a way to feel significant that is maybe not healthy. And so people who choose to, as you know, make others feel bad or put others down are people who are desperate to matter in some way. And they matter when they can have power over someone else. And so in our school, we don't have a lot of bullying. Of course, we have some incidents, but really we have this culture that's kind of magical in a way. And it's because I think we have so many avenues for kids to feel significant. We have 17 career pathways for kids to explore their passions, and more clubs than I could even name. I mean, we have a Quidditch club, which is like the sport in Harry Potter because someone wanted to start it. And so we also give a student survey and ask kids if they feel connected to their peers and connected to adults in the school, and we act on those responses. If students say they don't, we work hard to make sure that we reach out and connect to them so that they have someone important in their life that can mentor them. So there's so much work that goes into bullying that is so much bigger than anti-bullying programs. It's really about having each kid in your system feel like they matter and feel like they have a connection with someone and are seen and known.
Again, it doesn't matter if it's corporate or school or what have you. It always just goes back to that culture, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Hey, Amy, I just also want to let people know, a couple of years ago, my dear friend, Christy Ellis from Arizona, she sent me a wonderful article that suggested, and this is good timing as school's going to start in another month, that one of the things we can do, and that you can do with your kids, if your kids are fortunate enough to not be in a position where they're bullied, one thing they can do is if they see someone else either being bullied or kind of alone and needing, just, and of course not to put themselves in any danger in any way, but to step in when they can, and to take action, to make sure somebody doesn't feel unimportant or scared or what have you. And
Yeah.
and Kathy will post, and I actually did a blog post on that, and I thank Christy for doing that. But and Kathy can put the link to that, so whoever would like to read that certainly can. But what do you think of that idea in terms of?
Absolutely. I think like I said, the greatest safety measures in school are the proactive connections you make, and then
Yeah.
also the notion of if you see something, say something. And so we have had numerous safety issues that were headed off at the pass by students calling our anonymous tip line and saying, "I'm worried about this kid.
Oh.
He's been alone in the hall and he seems depressed," and those sorts of things. And it's kids taking ownership of their school culture and not just
Yeah.
making, or relying on the adults to do that, and really
Oh, I love
part
that.
of that proactive safety measure. And not just because they're concerned about their own safety, but because they care about the other kids around them. That's everything.
Yeah, I love what you just said. The students taking ownership of their school culture. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I have another question for you. This is from Steve White. In 2017, the state of Ohio mandated that all grades K through 12 should have some aspect of career readiness at some level within the curriculum. My specific question is, at what grade level should they really start asking questions and having the conversations that can lead and guide our students to career paths that align with who they are without robbing them of the joys of childhood and being a teenager?
Oh, that's such a big question. That's huge. Well, you have to kind of unpack that a little bit, and
Yeah.
this is what I spend my whole book trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is college and career readiness a sufficient end goal for schools? And I would say that having a career is not an end goal in life to begin with. Neither is going to college. No one says, "Well, now I'm done with college, so that was good. I'm a success. I'm done." I mean, those are also means to an end, right? Hopefully, you have a career so that you can grow personally and help others grow and go to college to do the same. So when I think of career readiness, I actually think of different things than just the technical skill that it takes to go into fire and emergency service or early childhood education or culinary arts. So if Steve's referring to specific careers, I don't think we want to pigeonhole kids into having to choose what they want to be. But we should have them always thinking about who they want to be. Like, what are my strengths? What value do I add to people around me, and grow those skill sets? And I would argue that the same skill sets that I have could be used in the field of education or business or law enforcement or whatever. And the career I have is secondary to who I am. My why can be inspiring people, whether I'm in the field of education or another field. But if I'm solid in that why, and I know what strengths I have to offer, then my career choice is actually pretty versatile.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing yourself should start in preschool. That piece of it. And we don't have to dive into, like, do you want to cook when you get older, or do you want to, whatever the specific path is. There's so many people who change their careers throughout adulthood as well, and they should. I mean, if they feel compelled to, they should. So having a kid pick a path early on is what we refer to in education as tracking. And who are we to say you should be on the career track and you should be on the college track, and these trades are better suited for you, whereas you're more capable, so you should do these trades. Tracking is viewed negatively in education because it's basically saying we're gonna label you at an early age and then give you limited opportunities and put you on this track to do this thing that we think that you would be you would be able to do well. What we want to do is have every kid think that college is an option for them. Make sure that we provide them the opportunities so that if they want to do that, they can do that. Have every kid think that careers outside of, immediately after graduating are an option for them, and then give them as many tools and resources as we can so that when they're seniors, they can make that choice for themselves and they're not locked into one track or another.
Dr. Amy Fast's book is It's the Mission, Not the Mandates. You can get that on Amazon, and that will be in the, I was going to say the show notes. That's what we do on the podcast, on the in the discussion area. Dr. Amy Fast on Twitter is twitter.com/fastcrayon or @fastcrayon. Her new blog called Fast Crayon Scribbles is at fastcrayon.com. The post I talked about earlier on my at the Burg blog, Bullying and Kindness, Your Message to Your Children. I saw that Kathy put that in there as well. For those who want to join our Facebook group, Go Giver Influencers Facebook, that's a free membership. You'll see that in the discussion area as well. If you would like to, we just finished with our latest Go Giver Entrepreneurs Academy. Wow, was that so much fun. And our next one's in November. So if you're interested in that, GoGiverEntrepreneursAcademy.com. The link will be in there. For those interested in becoming part of our team of Go Giver certified speakers, GoGiverSpeaker.com, and the link will be in there. And if you haven't read The Go Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann, that's at thegogiver.com. And our most recent book, The Go Giver Influencer, is there as well. You can get to 2 chapters of those. Dr. Amy Fast is the assistant principal at McMinnville High School in Oregon, and she's the author again of It's the Mission, Not the Mandate. Wonderful book. She's an active commentator on social media about public education policy and practice. And Dr. Amy, you're a delight, and I want to thank you for being who you are and being such a wonderful leader and for everything you do.
Thank you so much.
And this is it from here, another episode of Go Giver Influencers. We'll be back next week. Until then, make it a great day and a great week.